Hello and welcome back to The Great Game, my weekly video column based on my column in the Tribune newspaper, which some of you may have read, dear viewer, and if you don't, I'd urge you to read it and I'd like to hear what you have to say about it. You can find it in the newspaper as well as on an e-paper and online. And I would be really grateful if you could tell me what you think about it. I'm Jyoti Malhotra with the Tribune. And today's column, The Sounds of Silence from Pakistan, is about Tahawwur Rana, the Canadian national of Pakistani origin, one of the prime accused, a key conspirator in the 2008 Mumbai attacks. And in my column in the Tribune newspaper, and here I talk about why there is absolutely not one word in the Pakistani media about Tahawwur Rana. Now, you would expect that that a man who was a key conspirator in the 2008 Mumbai attacks 17 long years ago, and there is absolutely no closure to those attacks, although we know there's a lot of it in the public domain. We know that the Pakistani military establishment trained 10 terrorists, including Ajmal Kasab. 10 people were trained in the use of firearms. An Indian boat was hijacked, brought to Karachi, it was painted over, it was given a makeover, and then these 10 men were put into that boat and they set off for Mumbai. And at the end of November 26 to 28, for nearly 3 long days and nights, Mumbai came to a standstill. India's financial center was racked by the sound of guns through those long days and nights. So the question is, why is today, although it's so many years later, why is it that today the Pakistani media is keeping this pin drop silence? A blanket of silence has enveloped the Pakistani media. You read all the newspapers, dear viewer, the Dawn newspaper, the Jung, the Daily Times, the Friday Times, every paper in Pakistan, but not one word. It would seem as if you were living in Iceland or Greenland or a country very far away from India and Pakistan. Now, the question you're asking and the question I'm asking, and which I've answered in my column, is that we know why there is absolutely no news at all about Tahawwur Rana and, by extension, about the 2008 Mumbai attacks. And that's because the Pakistani military establishment, which masterminded the attacks, which gave direction, not just in terms of preparing the terrorists, but even while the terror attacks were ongoing in Mumbai, voice over internet protocol gave direction to these young men on what to do and how to do it. More than 170 people were killed, including about 20 security men, including foreign nationals. But today's Pakistani media, not a word. But the interesting thing, dear viewer, is that it was not always like that. And if you go back in time to 2008, you know that there was not just coverage in the Pakistani media, indeed in the media all over the world, but there was a lot of conversation about the attacks. 2008, take your memory back, dear viewer. Prime Minister Manmohan Singh was then Prime Minister of India. Shiv Shankar Menon was then Foreign Secretary. M.K. Narayanan was India's National Security Advisor. And there was, as you can imagine, the government was convulsed with how to respond. Was there an intelligence failure? Yes, of course, yes. How should the government respond? There was a lot of back and forth on this thing, which went on for days and weeks. And it was then decided that while India would shut down all communication, all diplomatic conversation and diplomatic relations with Pakistan, there would be no further escalation, in the sense of there would be no retaliation, no military retaliation, unlike what Prime Minister Modi did in 2019, much later in response to the Pulwama attacks. But that's not the story here. The story is about 2008, when Prime Minister Manmohan Singh decided to take a different course of events. And then what happened in Pakistan, and we know some of it, but we don't know all of it. Now, there is this gentleman called Mr. Tariq Khosa. He's a retired police officer, a former IG of Balochistan, which is again back in the news in Pakistan today because there's a lot of insurgency. People are being killed. Baloch insurgents are challenging the might of the Pakistani state, and Mr. Tariq Khosa in 2007 was an IG of police in Balochistan. In 2008, the Mumbai attacks take place, and by then he is the head of the Pakistan FIA, which is the Pakistan Federal Investigative Agency. And the Manmohan Singh government and the Pakistani government, already there is, by 2009, Asif Ali Zardari is back in power in Pakistan. And in 2009, there is already a civilian government in Pakistan. So there are talks between India and Pakistan, and the Pakistani investigators led by Tariq Khosa investigate the perpetrators of the Mumbai attacks, all of them in Pakistan. And I went back when I was writing my column for the Tribune, which has appeared this Saturday morning, dear viewer. When I was researching my article, I went back and looked at what Tariq Khosa said, and it would be really illuminating. It was very illuminating for me to read what he said, and I'm going to read out some of what he said, and that's what I begin my column with. And this is back in 2009. He carried out this investigation. But what I'm reading is from an article that he wrote in the Dawn newspaper, one of Pakistan's biggest newspapers, in 2015. And this is what he said. Pakistan has to deal with the Mumbai mayhem, planned and launched from its soil. This requires facing the truth and admitting mistakes. The entire state security apparatus must ensure that the perpetrators and masterminds of the ghastly terror attacks are brought to justice. The case has lingered on for far too long. This is Tariq Khosa, a brave man who on the 3rd of August 2015 wrote this article in Pakistan's Dawn newspaper. Now you would imagine that somebody who's writing an article on this, and that somebody would take action, not just somebody, the Pakistani government would take action. But of course, that did not happen. And again, we read another article in 2018, and this is an interview of former Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif by a Dawn journalist called Cyril Almeida. Cyril speaks to the former Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif, and you know Mr. Nawaz Sharif, he has a very interesting history with India. He was the man who, along with Atal Bihari Vajpayee, two former Prime Ministers, shook hands in that famous meeting in Lahore in February of 1999, followed of course by the operation in Kargil, when Pakistani troops, then masterminded by then Army Chief Pervez Musharraf. That's another story, dear viewer, and I'm going to come back to Nawaz Sharif. And the reason I'm bringing him into this video column of mine today is because in 2018, in that Dawn interview with Cyril Almeida, Mr. Sharif said that militant organizations continue to remain active in Pakistan. And then he goes on to ask Cyril, should Pakistan have allowed these non-state actors, call them what you will, militant organizations or non-state actors, should Pakistan have allowed them to cross the border and kill 150 people in Mumbai? And that interview of Nawaz Sharif by Cyril immediately elicits a reaction from the Pakistani state, and Mr. Nawaz Sharif is slapped with treason charges. Now, you would imagine that Tahawwur Rana, brought back from the US to India, extradited by the US to India, will be able to give you much more information, what happened, how he and David Coleman Headley, the other key conspirator in the Mumbai attacks, who, by the way, today is in a Chicago jail, and he's not coming back because he obviously has struck a deal with the US government, which enables him to stay on in the US and perhaps give information about what happened. Now, Tahawwur Rana has been extradited, and the question whether Tahawwur Rana was less important or more important than David Headley is a question that we will ask for a long time to come. But Tahawwur Rana is back, and hopefully he will give the Indian government much more information about what happened back then in 2008 in Mumbai, and why the Pakistani government wanted to bring Mumbai and India's financial center to its knees? We know that we know the answer to that, and the simple answer is that Pakistan wanted to bring India to its knees. I will take you back one more time, dear viewer, back to 2009, when soon after the attacks, the former Pakistani National Security Advisor, a gentleman called General Mahmood Durrani, accepted that Ajmal Kasab, who was caught by a Mumbai policeman, General Durrani accepted that Ajmal Kasab was a Pakistani citizen. And for that admission, he lost his job. Now, back to the present moment where you ask yourself, and I ask myself, why is it that the Pakistan media is not saying one word about the return of Tahawwur Rana? And the simple answer to that is that the Pakistani military establishment has thrown a noose around the Pakistani media, not just on the Shehbaz Sharif government, younger brother of former Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif, but across the country. So there's no way that anybody can defy that informal diktat. If you defy the Pakistani military establishment, you know that you're in big trouble. But it was always not like this. I have a lot of very good friends in Pakistan, including in the Pakistani media, and they've also been very brave in reporting the news. And the Pakistani media does have that reputation. They have stood up to dictators, whether Ayub Khan or Tikka Khan, across the decades. Several of them have been feted. They've been beaten up. They've been treated very badly, tortured by the Pakistani military establishment, but they have always said their piece, if not on the moment or at the moment, always later. And that's what we expect from them and continue to expect for them to speak up and hear their voices. But I will end this column with another quote by Tariq Khosa in that article, dear viewer, and in which he says, he admits how the Pakistanis masterminded this Mumbai attack. And he says, first, Ajmal Kasab was a Pakistani national whose place of residence and initial schooling, as well as his joining a banned militant organization, was established by the investigators, meaning by him and his team in the FIA. So the Pakistani FIA, the Federal Investigative Agency, uncovered this plot by its own men. And that's what Tariq Khosa is talking about. How these Lashkar-e-Toiba terrorists were imparted training near Thatta in Sindh and launched by sea from them. How the training camp was identified and secured by the investigators, by Tariq Khosa and his team. How the casings of the explosive devices used in Mumbai were recovered from this training camp and duly matched. Then again he goes on. And remember, dear viewer, this is Tariq Khosa, the former head of the Pakistan FIA, who investigated what the perpetrators had done, how they had trained in the attack on Mumbai. And he goes on to talk about the fishing trawler that was used by the terrorists for hijacking an Indian trawler in which they sailed to Mumbai, brought back to harbour, then painted and concealed. It was recovered by the investigators and connected to the accused. How the engine of the dinghy that was abandoned by the terrorists near the Mumbai harbour contained a patent number through which the investigators traced its import from Japan to Lahore and then to a Karachi sports ship. How the money trail was followed and linked to the accused. The military ops room in Karachi, from where the operation was directed, was also identified and secured by the investigators. Now, Tariq Khosa does not use the word military, I'm using that, but the ops room, where was the ops room? The communications through voice over internet protocol were unearthed. The alleged commander and his deputies who attacked Mumbai were identified and arrested, as well as foreign-based financiers and facilitators. And then Tariq Khosa ends his piece, his 2015 piece in Dawn, by saying that in 2009, Indian officials had conceded that Pakistan had done a professional job in indicting 7 perpetrators. And then he ends his article by saying, Are we as a nation prepared to muster the courage to face uncomfortable truths and combat the demons of militancy that haunt our land? Tariq Khosa's question resounds across Pakistan, or it would resound across Pakistan if the Pakistani media today were allowed to publish it. I'm Jyoti Malhotra, and before I go, dear viewer, I would encourage you to subscribe to the Tribune's YouTube channel, to follow my column, my video column, The Great Game, as well as my daily video column called Indian Standard Time and other video properties from the multimedia stables of the Tribune. Do follow us, tell us what you think, and we look forward to hearing from you. Bye for now.